Hey, welcome back everybody. So I decided to make another college video. This is not in any way connected to the first video I did on college, but if you are a college student or going to college, definitely hit the link below and watch my first video. Before we start the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And comment below if you have any questions that you would want me to answer. Let's get right into it. So essentially I wanted to make two separate videos. One was going to be on where you should apply, and another one would be on where you should choose to go, and this would be after the admission process. But essentially the factors appear to be the same to me, so I'm just going to make it into one video, and essentially you could use these factors in determining where you should apply and maybe where you should end up. So let's get right into it. So the first factor to consider is proximity to your home. So this might actually go either way. Maybe you want to be close to home, maybe you want to be far away. If you want to be close to home, then you would want to think about driving to school every day, coming back, how much gas it would take, do you have a ride, do you have a car, and stuff of that nature. If you're going to be far away, then you should consider a broad amount of factors. So you would want to make sure that you have shelter, obviously, food, maybe you will need a ride to school depending on how close you are living to school. Something important to point out, at least in my case, was that if we were a certain distance away from school, we would essentially be forced to live in dorms, at least for the first year. So that's something to consider. So that would automatically cover shelter, food, and living arrangement, and also how to get to school. Usually dorms are either on campus or very close. Mine was across the street from campus. You also need to take into consideration how big your school actually is, because my school was ginormous. So even though I was living across the street, it would take very long to get to where I needed to go. So the second thing is the people. So you want to consider the people that's going to be at these schools. You know, maybe you want it diverse, maybe you don't want it that diverse, maybe you want it maybe you want the vibes to be similar to that you grew up to, maybe you don't and you want to experience something new. So all of that is very important to consider. I recommend looking into that. So a website that I would rely on heavily throughout this entire video is called Niche. I'll put the link below. I won't really go through the website itself because I'm sure all of you guys are young, so you could go through it. It's very like functional and easy to understand. But Niche basically will help you understand aspects of the school. There are many ratings on there, so it'll give you an idea of the diversity or lack thereof at the school. And it will give you a description about where people actually come from. So maybe you'll have a better idea about the different groups of people that will be there. You can look through the ratings. I'm sure there's many ratings and comments about the type of people that are there, whether they're partiers or whether they're focused on their education, and everyone in between. So this brings us to the third factor, which can technically be determined in two different ways, but I recommend following both methods to figure out the vibes of the place. So the first way is very obvious. You could actually go to the place and see what it's like. If it's far from home, maybe you would want to take a visit at least once before deciding to go here. So in the application process, maybe you'll want to apply for fun, and if you do get accepted, then you can actually go check out the place so you don't waste the trip if you don't actually get in. But hopefully you do. The second way is obviously look at ratings. Niche also comes in hand again. You could always look at photos of the place. I recommend going to the website, seeing what the place looks like, maybe even Google Images. You have to take it with a grain of salt when you are looking at photos that are posted by the actual college, because obviously they'll make anything look good. So maybe Google Images will be helpful to see what the place really looks like. Maybe there's a lot of trees, maybe you like city life, and so forth. So something to really look into. Niche also could come in handy, since there'll be ratings for you there and whatnot, so you could rely on that. So the fourth thing I wanted to mention, you could also look at Princeton Review. You go on Niche if you want, is the rank of your school. So this might be important to some of you and maybe not others, but for me at least, it was very important that I went to school with a higher rank. So definitely look into that. Don't look at only one website. So that's my recommendation for you. If you're looking at rank, look at various different sites. I recommend Niche. I recommend Princeton Review, I believe that's what it's called. And you could just Google it and look at different ratings, see what people are saying about it. Niche is also helpful in that way, where it has all the reviews from actual college students and their perception on different factors of what the college was like. So take into account everything basically you find. Don't just look at one thing and be like, oh, it's rated this high, and you know, it might not actually be rated that high on other sites. So definitely take into consideration looking at different places. Another point I would want to make in terms of rank is, just because your school is ranked high overall doesn't mean that it's ranked the best in your major specifically. So that's something else you might want to consider. Your school might be ranked like 100 on a scale, but maybe for your major it might be the #1 school in the nation. So that's definitely something to consider, especially if you want to learn from the best. Essentially, you want to get the best education you can in your field. So it'd be very important for you to know how high your college is ranked in that major specifically, because it might not be that great even if it's a great school. So that's something to take into consideration. Another important point to choosing a college or applying to college is whether you want to go to grad school. So this becomes important because you need to understand whether you'll actually be able to do well at this college, or maybe it'll be too difficult for you. So grad schools, they look at a number of things. One of the main, very important things they look at is your actual GPA. So maybe if you go to this great school and you do extremely poorly, you'll have to understand that going to grade school and doing poorly might not be as great as going to a bad school and doing extremely well and graduating at the top of your class or something. So you might want to take that into consideration. Personally speaking, I've seen so many people go to grad school, and you could probably vouch for this yourself. If you go to the doctors or your dentist, maybe they have their diplomas hanging on their wall. Generally what happens is they went to a great undergrad school, and then by the time they went to grad school, it wasn't that great. So what most likely happened in between that time, and other factors could obviously factor into this, but what most likely happened, and I could personally vouch for this, is that you go to a great school and you're not the best student ever. That doesn't mean you didn't do well. You could do great at a great school, but if you're not at the top ranks, maybe it will be not worthless, but it won't mean as much to grad schools as it would be as compared to if you went to maybe a medium ranked school or like a lower ranked school and you did top of your class. Maybe it's gonna pave your way to your future. So that's something to take into consideration. Another point I want to make about the vibes. So when you're looking at these images, looking at ratings, you really want to see whether you could imagine yourself fitting into this place. You are going to be there for a while, especially if you are going to be living in dorms or apartment nearby. Then you are going to be in this area for a while, so you want to consider whether you really could imagine yourself fitting in. If you like the city life, then you obviously want to see whether there's a lot of stores there, a lot of malls there, a lot of restaurants, stuff like that. Maybe if you enjoy more of like a desolate type vibe, then you would want to see if there's less of a city life there, it's not congested with plenty of people or a lot of traffic and stuff of that nature. There are rankings about whether, you know, it's a party school or not a party school, whether everybody's just focused on school, like it's Harvard or something, stuff like that. You would want to like look into factors like that depending on what you really want. So another point I wanted to make is that you should take into consideration the fees to apply. Some schools won't even charge you a fee to apply. They might have you pay a processing fee, so you'd have to take all of that into consideration on how much it would actually cost to apply to the school. especially if you don't want to waste too much money and you are applying to more than a few places, since the application fees and the processing fees will add up. So that's something to definitely keep in mind. Like I said, you don't want to always believe what a college representative says or something of that nature, because they're getting paid to talk. So they probably will tell you what you want to hear. And also keep in mind, if you do take a tour of your college before choosing to go there, which I highly recommend, always take what the tour guide says with a grain of salt. While I was going to college, I've seen so many tours given by college students that go to my school, and they essentially make everything sound great. Everything just sounds perfect. There's never a bad day on campus. The weather is always perfect and everything's just amazing. And you know, nobody should ever be that naive. It's not always going to be like that. And I talk a lot about that in my other video, so definitely hit the link below. But it's not always going to be great. So definitely look at ratings of what other students say. That's always going to be more helpful than what a college rep would say, or a tour guide would say, or even what a college website would say. Everything is going to sound greater than it actually is, so definitely keep that in mind. Since it is the end of the video, I wanted to go into greater detail about Niche. I have never worked on Niche. I used a site that was very similar when I was applying to college. I couldn't find what that website was. I don't think it's around anymore, but Niche is pretty much a perfect example of the site I had used when I applied to schools and when I chose a school. So Niche goes over overall rank and also has several different ranks, including national rank. It goes into major ranks and stuff of that nature. It has student reviews, like I mentioned. There's thousands of reviews depending on what school you're looking into. The school I attended, I think there was almost like 5,000 ratings on there and reviews. So definitely something that's worth a read. Obviously don't read all of it, but maybe see some of the good, see some of the ugly, and figure it out from there. It also has information about academics, has information and ratings on the value, which means how much you're paying for what you actually get. It has ratings on campus stuff, party scenes, athletics, diversity. It also has the acceptance rate on there as application deadline, which is very important, as you would imagine. As information on what scores you would need to get in, what GPA you would need to get in, and it has like this nice little graph that shows you certain scores match up with certain GPAs and whether a person got in or not based on those numbers. It tells you the cost to actually attend a school. It tells you how much aid you might actually get. Tells you popular majors, so that's something to consider, especially if you do not have a major in mind, or maybe you do have it in mind but you want to see how many students are actually taking that major or have taken it at that school. It gives professors a student ratio, which basically means how many students will be in an average class for a professor. And it goes into student life as well. So it is a well-rounded platform for a lot of information in a very small space. You can get almost everything you need just on that one page of information. So I'll definitely check it out if I were you. That is pretty much all, guys. Let me know if I should make another video. I might make one on my own if more ideas come to mind. I think I pretty much covered everything that seemed important and was important for me personally. Share, like, and subscribe to this channel. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you.